Okay, Arjen. We started to work a number of years ago, and you were already very experienced in Fiware, being the CEO of Civity and already up and running with, I can't remember, 20 cities in Holland or something. But I don't think I ever really got to hear your history about why did you, as Arjen and Civity, start working with Fiware?
Yeah, it's a good question. I founded Civity in 2013. First 2 years, we were focusing on open data management and opening up data for government agencies. We already used the most used open data catalog available, that was CCAN. And as you said, we had about 30 municipalities in the Netherlands using this software. But at that time, we also saw that we were doing things in the Netherlands, but it is not a specific Dutch topic. So in 2014, we went to Brussels because there was an event about an initiative called Firewire. It was new to us, and they explained what they were doing. It was a public-private collaboration, European Union and the market together, to create a more open solution for the European market, instead of the big tech players that were doing these kind of things like, okay, how can we collaborate within the European Union on these things? Not only about the technology, but also how basically there were two topics that triggered us. Is like, okay, we need an ecosystem. There is not one party that can do everything alone. And if you want to innovate, you have to have a low entrance for new parties. So Fireware was offering so-called lab environments. And these lab environments could be used by anyone who had a good idea, but not the money, but they had a good idea to try their solution with the existing components, with the idea that if you develop something for Lund or for Stockholm and it works, that it's easy transferable to Rome or Helsinki or Amsterdam or whatever, because it was based on standards. And that idea, low entry, it's open standards, reusable, that triggered us. And they had these labs running all over Europe, but there wasn't a lab in the Netherlands. So we went back home, talked to different other parties and said, okay, if we support this idea, it would be great to have a Dutch Fireware lab also. We went to the economic board of the province of Utrecht in the center of the Netherlands. Their goal was that we want to become the smartest region in Europe. Said, okay, we can help you.
That's good with a driving customer.
Yeah. So they helped us to create this and supported us with a subsidy for 2 years to create this lab environment. But we said, it's not only about creating a technical lab environment, we should do additional things about learning, events, and other things, etc. So we basically had an incentive for parties who wanted to use the lab environment so they could have a contribution for their proof of concept and they could have learning experience, etc. So that's the reason why we started this. And when we started it with the lab environment for Civity, it was interesting, like, okay, this might help grow the ecosystem, but the technical solutions from Fireware, if they are mature, why not integrate them in our own platform? And then we have a experimentation environment and we have a production ready environment that if people want to scale up, we can offer this more mature environment that they can use. So that was the starting of our Fireware journey.
Right. So basically you are one of the pioneers.
In the Netherlands, but there were already a few others in Italy and Spain and in France, etc. There were already some people starting. So yeah, we helped from 2015. We were one of the early adopters of this environment. It helped because I mentioned in my presentation also, we were involved in 2 European projects with Utrecht, but also with Gothenburg, for example. And in these projects, we said, okay, we are going to use the Fireware platform. And that was a trigger also to create this generic platform for cities. And the city of Utrecht, for example, that is using it, said, okay, this is very important for us because we don't want to have a vendor lock-in. We want to have an open ecosystem. We want to collaborate with other cities. Everything that is developed should be shared with others as well, because that's the only way we believe that you can have a successful innovation working.
Exactly. In those early days, I've heard from universities and so forth in Sweden that there were quite a number of Swedish parties working with Firewire initially also, but they gave up because it was not mature enough in the beginning.
Yeah.
I guess you were stubborn.
And that was true in the beginning. If you use these open source components, and from the beginning, I've always said I'm not going to argue about these technical arguments, etc., because that's one thing. And yes, if you look around, you can find perhaps more mature technical components and whatever you want. But it's the Fireware thing, like the open standards, the open innovation, the open data models, the collaboration, etc. That was one thing. So in the years that passed later on, they had a certification process to certify mature solutions. They the versioning of the components, they became better and better because everyone could contribute to these things. So if you look at the Fireware platform now, the core components like the context broker, etc., have grown enormously over the past years. Also because Fireware reached out to standardization organizations, worked together with others like TM Forum, like Etsy, like other organizations. So what you see is, yes, if you start with something new in the beginning, yeah, you need to grow. But the fact that you can contribute and you work together and you collaborate, you can contribute to making it better each day.
Exactly. We're trying. We just contributed our context broker.
Yeah, I've seen that's
and
very
I'm really
good.
looking forward to see both you and Civity also adopting to this one.
Yeah,
but let's see.
Yeah. You have to talk to Civity yourself.
I'm doing.
Yeah, but I think that's the great contribution. And as you see, they started with the context broker only supporting the NGSI version 2, and now they are moving to the linked data component. And your context broker is supporting it, but the original context broker is also migrating and supporting this LD version. So I think it's also good to have choice and different solutions. But if they all are based on the same standards and interoperable with each other, then you create an ecosystem that will, well, be sustainable in the future too.
Exactly. Well, to be quite honest, we have support for NGSI v2 currently. We are developing on LD, but we're not there yet.
No, but I think that's also a discussion. If you read the documents on the Fiware website, for example, they reached out to Etsy, for example, and Etsy supported this NGSI LD, and they adopted it and made it more mature. And now Fiware has the Orion LD, the context broker thing that is supporting that as well. So technology is evolving each day, each year, and there are new things growing. And the fact that in the beginning there were research institutions and cities, etc. But if you look at the ecosystem now, the number of standardization organizations, the number of research institutes, the number of cities, the Open and Agile Smart Cities initiative that is adopting these Fireware standards, then you see it's like, I don't know how you say it in English, but this oil it is growing. It's like a snowball starts to run.
As Civity, you have been working with quite a number of cities, and Firewire has a promise of, let's say, data sharing and service portability and service interoperability and so forth. How much of that is happening in reality right now?
Well, to be honest, because That's the reason why I always say it's not about the technology part. If I look at what is happening in cities at this moment, the quality of the data, their governance that they have internally is still in the early phases to do so. So what you see now is a lot of proof of concepts and pilots and small projects, etc., to learn how these things work, whether it's about air quality or parking or mobility initiatives or things like that. So if I look at cities in the Netherlands, there are different projects going on, but a integral and a more combined approach that's still in its early phases. So the concept of context information and combining things, etc., needs to grow. The fact that Fiware is now looking, for example, at digital twins. Every Dutch city, for example, has a plan to create a digital twin.
Yeah.
But a digital twin can only exist if there is proper data and if the data quality is all right and if there's real-time data available, etc. So they are finding out more and more that you can create a great application on top of it, but if your foundation is not right, it will never fly.
Correct. And you mentioned one thing, quality of data.
Yeah.
There is loads of data out there. I was going to use a bad word. There's loads of data out there, but the amount of really quality assured data is not that big.
It differs because I think in Sweden also and in the Netherlands, if you look at we have base registries like addresses and buildings, etc. So and public transport and traffic flows, etc. So those kind of data sources are high quality. But if you want to develop a new neighborhood or you want to look at your city and then you want to know, okay, what's the air quality within this neighborhood, or what are the exact number of bicycles going through this neighborhood, or what amount of waste is collected over here. So if you ask more specific questions about these things, then you will find out that each city is reinventing the wheel because there is no national data source about these kind of topics. It's very fragmented. It's not real time. It's not updated, etc. So there are some national data sources very good, but the specific topics that you need for policy making, they are lacking.
Exactly. I'm so happy there is still work for us to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing I'm wondering a little bit about, we have discussed that before also. Firewire is a very big European initiative and has been supported by European Union. But there are also a couple of other European initiatives. One is Gaia X, and on top of that, there is also a number of funded platform projects where they are inventing new IoT platforms or new digitalization platforms. How do you see all those initiatives going forward? Will there be competition or will they somehow be merged, or what do you think?
First of all, I want to emphasize that Fireware started as a European initiative, but it's now a global thing. So if you see, India has a big smart city program and Fireware is collaborating with them. Mexico, South America, United States. So there are all over the world are Fireware things happening at the moment. So that's also very important. Then the other thing is, I mentioned in my presentation, like if you want to be Fireware compliant, then the context broker is a central component. But we also believe that there will not be one platform running the world. We will live in a system of systems or multiple platforms, and we will more have like what we call it a federative system. So if you look at mobility, or if you look at housing corporations or real estate, or if you look at other topics, there will be different platforms. But if you want to use the data or combine the data from these platforms, it is very important to have agreements on standards and interoperability. So I don't think there will be one platform, and yes, perhaps there will be competition, But I think the synergy that you will see is about the standards and the data models and the APIs to connect these different platforms. So that's one thing to mention. The other initiatives like Gaia, and there's the big data experience thing in Europe, and there are some other initiatives going on, and there's the Open Geo Consortium is working on standards, etc. Yes, in this phase you see that there are multiple initiatives going on, but I know that Fireware is talking with Gaia X, and Gaia X is more like the infrastructure component that the European wants to develop as a alternative for the Amazon and Googles and Microsoft from etc. So yes, running Fireware on these platforms should be possible, and I know Fireware is talking about it. And standardization, or you say collaboration. I know that Fireware is always reaching out to other organizations to see how they can work together. TM Forum I mentioned, Etsy I mentioned, etc. Because the whole goal of Fireware is like not, if something already exists, reuse it or adopt it and integrate it. Saref is a very good example of that. If Etsy is doing it, Fireware is working together with Etsy. And there is Saref for water, for example. And I know there are 3 or 4 large European projects going on water and sustainable water management. And there you see that they work on, there's a collaborative approach to creating these data models based on Saref, working with Fireware, etc. So yes, there will be all kinds of flowers growing in the next few years. And there will be competition perhaps, but I think there will be more and more synergy about the standards, APIs, and interoperability.
One thing very relevant for many of our customers, real estate companies in Sweden, is a linked data model or platform, Real Estate Core.
Yeah.
And we have been discussing this before. Whether this is a competitor to Fireware, or whether this is rather an initiative that will be incorporated in Fireware as we move forward. What do you think about that?
I think, first of all, in my presentation, there is smartdatamodels.org. That's the library of the Fireware data models. You can have a look whether there's already something about real estate mentioned over there. If not, there are options to contribute, like a request for a proposal or a request for change, etc. So if this real estate core is already existing and Fireware is not having something similar, it would be a very good idea to propose to Fireware and say, look, this is already available. It's a standard used in Scandinavia, for example. Let's adopt it together, and let's see if we can make this a standard that is also usable in the rest of the world.
Yeah. I think that's something for us to elaborate on and discuss with stakeholders in Sweden and see how we can, move on in some way.
We have had something similar about EV charging, for example. There's a Dutch, French, etc. It's OCPI called, and that's already a standard. But Fireware has also a standard about EV charging. And what we are trying to do is like, okay, can we integrate or combine the best of both worlds to see how we can use it? Because it doesn't make a lot of sense to have 10 different standards or competing standards, but let's unite and combine them.
Exactly. As you said before, or we discussed before, Firewire was founded once upon a time in Europe and now moving to India and so forth. There is a big market called USA.
Yeah.
And USA is very dominated by the American CSPs. What do you think about the future for Firewire in US?
I think there's a very good future because the NIST, the standardization organization, is working with Fireware, and it's also good. There is no, I don't want to say that that it is against Google, Microsoft, or Amazon or something like that. Their platforms, everything is containerized these days, etc. You can run Fireware on Azure. You can run Fireware on Amazon Web Services, for example. So if in the United States, cities say, okay, we are more used to using these kind of cloud providers, you can still have your Fireware tooling on it, and it even makes it easier if you want to change platforms or cloud providers to move to a different one. So you should separate perhaps the cloud infrastructure and the Fireware tooling on top of it and the standards. And I know that for digital twinning and for other things, etc., at least Microsoft is collaborating and trying to find out if they can use it. So I think even in the United States, there is a big progress going on, and they were one of the first on open data, for example. Now, after 4 years now, they are trying to catch up again. So they are doing things again, and I know that they are looking at openness and transparency and interoperability. They find it quite important as well. So I know the Fiware organization is talking with the United States too, and a problem in Stockholm is not in many ways similar to what is happening in Chicago or Philadelphia or whatever. They all have their parking problems, they all have their air quality, and they're all kinds of real time, etc. And these cities are also looking for openness.
Yeah. No, the first, I think at least, the first American iHub started up last year in Texas.
Yeah.
And we are in connection with them and trying to collaborate. And I think we will collaborate going forward. Yeah, but it's a good initiative to see that things are happening over there as well.
Yeah, but I heard you are working on an iHub too.
Yes, we do. I'm so much looking forward to get the final decision. It's progress, and we have positive responses. So I'm just waiting for the final decision.
Yeah.
So
I think it's very, as I said, it helped us a lot in the Netherlands to have this iHub, because we had a physical center with events and documentation and learning things. We had a lab environment, and it was basically an enabler for innovation and collaboration and exchanging knowledge, etc. So if you want to start something in Sweden as well, we are happy to share what we have done and our learnings, etc. And great things, examples that we have created can be exported to Sweden and vice versa. So it would be great to have an iHub in Sweden too.
Thank you. To be honest, we're counting on it. That's why that's why we were bold enough to go for it.
Yeah.
Maybe we should also mention that this is recorded, so hopefully we have an approval and we are up and running with the iHub when you see this webinar. Hopefully.
Yeah.
We touched a little bit about the Future City Foundation. I'm a little bit curious now when we start up our iHub. Could you explain or describe a little bit what biggest mistake you have done that we should try to avoid?
Well, mistakes with learning.
Or you never do such.
Yeah. A few things. First of all, it's good to know that we started in 2015 and we called it the Fireware Lab NL, a Dutch NL. Yeah. One of the things we did different is after 2 years we rebranded or renamed it to the Future City Foundation. Because Fireware Lab NL, for a lot of people, it sounded too technical, or they thought it was something technical. That was one thing. And the focus in the beginning was on the lab and doing projects on top of it, etc. And convincing people doing these technical projects was not easy. So we learned during those 2 years, it's not only providing the technical tools, but by creating the Future City Foundation. The Future City Foundation now is a organization that works with 40 municipalities, and they do events. Every year we write a book about smart cities. Their goal is basically, that's the reason why it's called Future City, to connect or link the urban planning specialist with the technology specialist. Because the things happening in cities, the changes digitalization will cause for cities, will change the profession of urban planners too. So trying to show them what technology, data, digital twins, etc. means for their profession is we needed to involve them. So we are basically creating awareness events aimed at urban planners. And the technical part is supporting that, but there's a little bit less focus on the technical part, but more on the business side. So one of the learnings was like, yes, you need this technical platform, but constantly promoting like, okay, we have a great technical lab environment, use it. That's not working. You can better try to show urban planners, for example, like, okay, what is happening and what does data, how can data help your profession, etc. And look, it is great to use a open platform for that, etc.
Yeah, thanks. I'll think about that. Probably we need to modify the marketing a little bit from what we have planned, but I think it's a very good advice.
No, but it's you can do both, because you have your startups and you have your technical community as well, and you can, and in the iHubs there is this mentoring program, etc. So yes, teach them also, but I would say focus not only on them, because you have to have a, what are the urban challenges, what are the tasks at hand, because it helps the techies also to find solution that is helping a real problem to solve. So if you can connect both worlds, it makes it easier for tech people to create solutions that are really used, and it is for the business people to understand the kind of solutions that can help their work too.
I understand. Good advice. Thanks.
Yeah.
You have now left Civity, and as far as I don't know how many things you're going to do going forward, but I know at least 2 things. You have an official role now in Firewire Foundation, right?
That's right. I'm member of the Smart City Committee.
Right. And I know you. You are a little bit like me. You picture a dream and then you just run for it and go for it and try to achieve that. So what is your dream in that position? What are you going to achieve in the next couple of years?
In the Smart City Committee?
Yeah.
You mean?
Yeah. You did take that role for a purpose, right? It was not just to sit down with good friends, right?
Exactly, but it is also because I believe in what Fiware is doing, and that's the main thing, to be part of that. But and in the way it is growing in cities now, and what I would like to contribute, and that's what I'm talking about with the Fiware Foundation too, is they are developing what they call a marketplace too. Because what you see now is, yeah, we can talk about data and we can talk about great solutions, but personally, I still find it's all too much in proof of concept, small pilots, etc. It's it's lacking this scaling up, etc. So, and there are reasons for that, because we need to have service level agreements, we need to have quality assurance, we need to have better documentations, etc. So my goal is within the Fireware Foundation is, okay, there's a solid foundation, technology, standards and other things, but the usage is still, in my perspective, lacking. And it's still lacking in a way that cities are not using it in their primary processes, for example, and they are not using it in mission critical processes, not at scale at least. So my personal goal is to help the Fireware Foundation to add the technical part with more like the things that TM Forum is adding, like service management and quality assurance and business agreements, etc., to help the good work that Fiware already did being adopted and create these marketplaces that offer new business models, new monetization models, etc.
Understand. And when you describe this, I get the feeling that there is a very strong relation between that mission and what you intend to do in your other role as CTO in this new company, WeCity. WeCity is a fabulous name, by the way. Could you describe why you came up with that idea for the name?
It's always with these kind of things. We have been discussing about it for half a year, We've tried every Latin name, and we've even looked at Swedish names, etc. But then basically you try to find if is the domain name still free. But that's that's more the trivial things. Now we want the whole goal. First of all, I started with City because it's about the we. So I'm a strong believer of we and collaboration and doing things together, supply side and demand side, and being open on these kind of things. That's one thing. But the we is also about and that's called we city in the sense that it's about the citizens and the people living in the city. So for me, a smart city is not a city that is full with technology. A smart city is a city that uses technology in such a way that we have a sustainable, livable, safe environment for citizens over there. So that's what we want to achieve with WeCity, and WeCity is trying to help suppliers and demand side. And demand is not only city, but if there's, for example, a new urban development area where there are infrastructure parties or building companies involved, more and more they need to use technology as well to measure available parking spots or air quality, etc. And everything is interconnected. And who is responsible for what? And how do you manage all these change? That's still something in its early phases. And we believe that if we want to have a sustainable and also a manageable smart city, we need to have more focus on these change and these connections, and that's what we are going to do.
Sounds perfect. I love that.
Yeah.
How can Sensative and Sensative's customers how can you provide support to us?
A good question. I wasn't prepared for a sales pitch, but yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Yeah, first of all, I think the customers you have in real estate, but also your cities, as long as we work together, we've always said it's not quite different what's happening in Sweden, what is happening in the Netherlands, for example. So same culture, same kind of things. We are a bit more rude, but for the rest, it's the same. But yeah, so what I would like is that what you are doing with your cities and how you support them with your Igio platform and your Fireware tooling, etc., that we can contribute on top of that, that you can have a very mature and solid platform, but we can help you to provide this layer of service management and contract management and quality assurance, etc., on top of that, so that you have not only your technology in place with the sensitive part, but also the assurance about that service level management is well available.
Mm.
That's a quick answer. Yeah, I as I said, I wasn't.
I wanted you to paint heaven for us.
No, yeah, it's not about heaven, but you asked me about my perspective. But if you look at topics like mobility as a service or energy transition or all kinds of things, as I said, a lot of projects are not, and not only Fireware, but a lot of smart city projects are not in real critical processes implemented. But if you do mobility as a service or energy transition and you use battery technologies and solar panels and other kinds of things, if you don't manage that right, this whole chain, and you have an outage of your energy system, then you have a big problem. Yeah. So my perspective is it's not now, but in the next 10 years, we will have a transformation about sharing vehicles or mobility as a service and new kinds of business models. And they completely depend on the quality of data, but also the quality of services that are provided between many stakeholders. So something like mobility as a service, you have someone who is doing the bicycles, someone who's doing the cars, you have public transport, you have a EV charging stations, etc. So if you think about that for 5 minutes, you can come up with 10 to 15 different stakeholders involved in such a solution. And if one of the stakeholders makes a mess of it, all the others have a problem.
Right.
And that's
the mission of WeCities then is to try to I should say, set up policies and certifications and plug test testing and whatever in order to try to minimize those kind of problems.
Yeah. So one of the things that we are doing is we're creating a catalog and a marketplace with certified solutions. So if you have a solution based on open standards and compliant with these kind of things, and you have your service management in place, then it provides more guarantees to the customers, because they know that the kind of solutions that they choose, at least there is there are guarantees in place, and those guarantees we will manage for them.
Exactly. Sounds like a little bit of heaven, at least.
I hope so. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you intend to work, so to say,
even if it's not
globally,
heaven,
or in? Sorry.
Even if it's not heaven, at least it's a moonshot. Yeah.
Do you intend to work in globally or in Europe,
Yeah,
or what's your intention?
In our plan, we have world domination in 2023. So
yeah. May I be a little bit of part of that?
Yeah, but at least first of all, we have a focus on large infrastructure companies, and we are working in the Netherlands, etc. But yes, our goal is also to reach out to Sweden and Belgium and Germany, etc. And the fact that we are already working together for several years now, it is well possible that our first step will be Sweden again.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Arjen, for joining us today.
You're welcome.
And I look forward to our journey together. Exactly.
Me the same. And if there are any questions or people want more details, you know how to find me.
Totally do.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay.
Take care.
Okay, Mats. Yeah.